Welcome to AFP. My name is Devang and Sean. I'm joined by the usual suspects, Sean, Kay, and David Goss. On today's show, we chat Messi to Inter Miami confirmed, ? Canada eliminated from the World Cup with one match to play, but we talk about the historic Alphonso Davies goal and everything else that's accompanied it. Plus, the US makes it out of Group B with England after battling Iran in an emotionally charged match. Plus, of course, it's the mailbag. Ask AFP. I'm not sure how you're still standing, David, after that match, because even as a neutral, technically, who does have a soft spot in my heart,
for the States,
the Yanks. That was a tough game to watch.
The States,
Let's go, as we love to call them.
You can call them whatever you want in the round of 16.
But congrats, sir. Congrats. Yeah,
it has been physically and mentally exhausting. The Wales game. I came into the Wales game. I'm not going to lie. I probably came into it with a low bar of like, similar to I think what we'll talk about with Canada. It's like, I just want to see them play themselves. Like, right, just be there. And then it was super unfortunate they didn't win. The England game, I stood or crouched at a bar for like 2.5, 3 hours. And afterwards, my legs physically hurt from the amount of like tension. And then today I was like, I got to watch by myself. I can't be around people. I'm pretty sure I'm losing my voice. I had to move my coffee table so I didn't just shatter it in reacting over the course of this game. I spent 50% of the game down on my knees on my carpet in front of the TV, not noticing I was in that position. So I guess if you're asking me how I handle it, my argument would be I'm not handling it, and it's just lucky that I survived.
I think that's fine. It doesn't matter how. It's just that you made it through, and you have literally into the knockout round. Sean, how did you watch the Canada game so far? Alone, with family, close family, friends, a bar?
So the Belgium game, I chose to go to a bar, just my local. I didn't want to go to a big party or anything. Yeah. I didn't want to see people I knew. I went to a local bar that like I know the staff, but that's about it. But it was packed. It was great. I was shot, saw 40, 50 strangers see me weep 2 or 3 times before the first the kickoff. So it was a little weird, but once the game got going, that one was really fun. And then the other one, the second game, I watched it with my family. And the K's are a big soccer family. We grew up, like, my dad was my coach. And then when my younger brother, who's like 8 years different than me, went through the system, we all coached his team. Like, our family photos were soccer team photos. So watch with them. So it was really nice to feel the warmth of like the 2005 Canada disappointment in 2022. So it was good, but both sides, like, looking back, I think it'll be really special to see that Canada's first goal. I was standing. We were all hunched around the kitchen countertop, all screaming 90 seconds into the game. So it was a special moment, but also a real disaster of a game. Devang, what did you get up to?
Well, first, I'm glad I took that prop bet of SK crying before the first game, so I cashed in.
Oh boy, it was ugly.
At your local book, where that's. That will be legal soon, by the way, where you can bet on other people's emotions. I'm sure that's coming in our hellscape that is the universe. I watched in a very sterile environment because I was basically working right after the game. So rather than I think I would have watched if I wasn't working alone the first game for sure, because I don't know if I would have been sane in the DG lane there, where it's like you kind of just want to feel comfortable and act out how you want to act out, but. Watched it with some coworkers the first game, and it was actually quite rewarding and cool. And I think it was also one of those things where the surrealness of it all quickly passed into, holy crap, this is a game I want to win so bad. And this feels like I'm watching a qualifying game times a million in terms of stakes. And oh God. And that basically carried on for most of the match. And then Croatia, I think, was a bit different because I think the hopium I was feeling at that time was at a ridiculous level. And then Fonzie scored. And then I was allowing myself to believe anything was literally possible. And obviously it wasn't. So Sunday was tough. Sunday, I felt like I was mourning something. So it's been a road back. it's Tuesday now, but I still feel a bit wounded, I guess is what I'd say. I know it's not a surprise that they lost to Croatia that way at all, but it did take a bit out of me.
World Cup days are like dog years. Like, oh, that game was Sunday? Yeah, so it's been 3.5 weeks to do. You know what I mean?
It's the one thing I will say, just to finish this up, is that the emotion and the longevity of me reliving Eustachio nutmegging De Bruyne in the middle of the park. Like, I think I remember that for like 2 days straight. That's all I thought about. I was making breakfast. That's all I thought about. Just like anything. It was like one of those moments where I don't think I'll ever forget it, just because of how audacious it was. And
if Fonzie doesn't score that goal, and let's say we don't score a goal at this tournament, they would have made a Canadian Heritage Minute short out of that nutmeg. They could have done a 5-minute video on just an oral history on the nutmeg.
World Cups are fun, man.
Yeah. Are they more fun with your team in it? Let me ask.
Oh God, yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Like, I know there's so much stress involved in it, but like, I don't think I've ever felt a World Cup like I've felt this. And it's special, it's scary, but it's something on another level. It's, I think this is something special, but who knows?
We got time to get into that plenty. But I think it's the way this happened as well, that we qualified and it's not 2026 when it's an invite. I think that made us feel quote unquote legitimate, even though I hate using that word. It just, like I said, I think the stakes of everything just multiplied by a factor that I wasn't expecting, because I thought I was prepared, and it catches up fast, and it was awesome, exhilarating, and also heartbreaking. And that's the beautiful game, ain't it? I think the messy stuff we can get to a bit later, so we'll shelve that for now and get into our friends at Sports Interaction. We partnered with them to have some fun with their prop bets. How are we feeling about Fonzie doubling up his total against Morocco? And if he does, will he score another header?
Ooh. I feel like a header feels unlikely. He doesn't score many of them. So for it to happen twice, but it feels like he's definitely going to play again, right? Like, I think the way John Herdman's going to treat this game, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, I think he's still in the field. My absurd thing, and I don't even know if it's an option, is I'd go with Oso. I think he's going to start. He's dangerous. He's aggressive.
Yeah.
And I think him and Ismail Kone would be a sneaky one to win a lot of money.
I agree with you. I think having Davies score another header is such a wild moment, because also you need to have, and no disrespect to Tejan, but you're going to need Tejan to throw in a beautiful cross like that again. And Tejan, that's not his game. So I think it's a tough one. And I think you're completely spot on, David. I think Oso is a great, even when he came into that game, and once again, we'll go into this next round. Once he came into that game, there was a different tone set to that game, and I just felt like he was trying to push, and he was pushing the right way. It was good to see.
Big odds, plus 1,000. So yeah, it probably won't happen again via header, but I could see him scoring. Meanwhile, sadly, I could see this next one coming true as well. Plus 900. Will Canada score first again and then lose? Morocco's really good. We'll talk about that, but I think Morocco's going to be extremely up for this and have a lot of fans in attendance willing them on. So I could see this one happening as well.
Yeah. I think anything can happen in this game. I think there is so much on the line, but I think that Canada is going to be a little bit looser and free. And so, who knows? But I definitely think at this, like at plus 900, like there's definitely, I would put more money on this than I would have on Alphonso Davies scoring with his head.
One more no luck connects players to hit the woodwork versus Morocco, so that's hit the post. Dang, we're getting really dark. But Jonathan David did last game. He's plus 900. Give me Steven Vittoria plus 5,000 off a set piece. Not bad.
I like
that.
I like that.
Yeah. Tejan's plus 1,600. Maybe a cracker from outside the box. There's some odds there to be crushed all over again as we watch this game. But On the team, who do you think would win the crossbar challenge? I want to say Oso again would be a nice shout.
Yeah, I would say Eustachio. He could probably hit it on purpose the most.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we will see him in there. I think Alistair Johnson's a decent shout as well. You know?
He does have a lot of long range goes and opportunities. So yeah, it's not a bad shout.
Find these props, lines, and more at Sports Interaction Canada's sportsbook, bit.ly/Soda Podcast. Join now today. Got to be 19 plus, and please make sure to play responsibly when we come back after the break, where Team Canada stands with one match remaining in Qatar. Welcome back to AFP. Since the last time we spoke to you, Canada played their first two games at the 2022 World Cup. Game 1, Belgium, a Belgian team that, as we're learning quickly, boy oh boy, they've got some problems. But coming into the game, still the number 2 ranked nation in the world. They've still got KDB, and yet from the outset, it seemed like this was Canada's game to win. We know all about the penalty that Fonzie missed, saved by Courtois, but basically shot at him. A lot of commentary about whether or not Fonzie was supposed to take that. He took the ball under his arm, but was he the designated penalty taker? Jonathan David takes penalties for his club. I think Fonzie had taken 2 for Canada in the last few years, but both against pretty small countries with lower stakes. Enough ink, enough voices, and we've heard a lot, read a lot about the penalty, but I do wonder in this alternate timeline of things going for Canada the way we would have liked, Jonathan David getting off the mark with a goal. Man, I wonder if that would have changed things for him, because it hasn't seemed like it's clicked for him at all, and I wonder confidence-wise, if he's given the ball in that chance and is able to convert, are we looking at a different story for him?
Yeah. This is still a tough one to me. Given the ball, whose responsibility was it? Is that Fonzie's responsibility to recognize that? Is it Herdman's to sort of make sure it's laid out what the expectations are? Was it Atiba's to step up as the veteran and sort of decide who takes it? I think unfortunately for me, there's a few things we're going to talk about, obviously, Canada being out already, that weren't up to the par of where they should be at a moment like this. This feels like one of them. This felt unprepared. This felt like when you have a kid in youth soccer who's the best player, and it's like, well, they'll just do all the stuff, right? And they'll decide. It's like, Alphonso Davies is not a PK taker. Right. That's fine. That's not a knock on him. And like, that's just a reality that should already be aware. Okay, maybe against the Cayman Islands, that's fine. But as you said, this is a different level, and this just felt right out the gates with as much as was prepared correctly that this was something that was overlooked.
I tend to agree, and I think this seems to be one of the common points across the game so far for Canada. A team that got a lot of details right, if not all of them, began to miss some of them in really big moments against nations, frankly, that they haven't faced before in terms of level. And say what you will about Belgium, but they're still stacked with a lot of old dudes, according to KDB, so you can't get mad. He called them old, so I can say it. But I guess a lot of guys who have been in plenty of matches, huge matches. Sean, it felt ill-prepared, and I think I don't want to dwell on it too much because I think Canada played really well, but I felt like there were some instances where it did seem like those finer details are missed. And another one of them to me was the fact that they conceded twice right before halftime in both games. That felt to me like a team was maybe not at their highest level in terms of energy, but also maybe switching off a bit too early.
They definitely did switch off there. And I felt like they haven't had this opportunity to play such elite level teams in moments, and all they need is one, and especially with a back line that needs to like get it right every single like time. It's just it's tough for Vitória to turn off in that moment, to let his mark go, and And it's just they like with Victoria, Miller, and Johnson, they need everything to go right in these games for them to come away. And the second that they turn off, it's impossible. I think one of the things that hasn't been talked about a lot, and maybe I'm wrong for putting blinders up, but I feel like in both games, they have completely changed the way that they had qualified and played. And I know that they're up to a different level, but you had this form and this style of playing, and you completely sort of moved it away. And like how Adekugbe isn't involved in this process when you've just done things that you've never done before. I felt like, to go back on sort of give Davies everything, it just sort of was like, well, the left side's his and go for it. I feel like that they completely missed the mark in that, and giving themselves something a little bit more comfortable and recognizable that they could sort of tighten up when they need to and bring that extra pace through it. But I don't know. David, do you think I'm overthinking it?
I think this is an interesting World Cup to talk about that because you have the Saudi Arabia win over Argentina. And that is the model of, I need a gimmick to get this squad over that squad, right? Because if we lay out and we play the two of us against each other, they're going to beat us 9 out of 10 times, 98 out of 100, whatever it is. And I don't think that's totally a knock. I don't mean that as a complete knock on the Canadian squad. I think it's a reality of where we're at, which was with COVID and the lack of friendlies, Canada was not at the level that Belgium and Croatia are at. And so Herdman went and looked at their skills and skill sets and something they could build out of because it's close enough to what they already did, and made the decision to open the game up, press a little bit higher. And in reality, if they score the penalty, it works, right? And that's sort of the gamble that you were always taking. I believe one of Devang, what you just said to me is one of the big issues I have, which was, especially in the Croatia game, when you do score, was the lack of a decision to take it off at any moment and to just try and do it for 90 minutes is a bit ridiculous. Yeah. Sean, I know what you mean. I would say, and I assume this is what Herdman said, if Canada sat in and defended for 90 minutes against Belgium, I think they give up more than one goal. And I don't know that they score.
Sure. And I don't think I'm saying that. I just think that you still have that sort of protection and that sort of like back four that know each other and know how it all happens and just can tighten up when you need to. The other thing that I would say to sort of counter what, like if Canada scores that penalty and you sort of see what happened in Croatia, does that change the second half completely? Like if Canada scores that penalty, did they turn into that shell of themselves and just like try to soak up Belgium?
That's what hurts the most though about the penalty miss, because it would have been amazing to have that test run if you were able to do it again against Croatia. I feel like having that knowledge, or like, because I maybe they do, right? Maybe they do against a Belgium team that clearly is not a cohesive group and doesn't have that chemistry in the final third at all, as we saw in their next game. Maybe they do get out of that. Maybe they do get some solidity. I wonder if we'll figure out something after the tournament in terms of Sam Adekugbe. Like if his fitness level wasn't there, or they had a decision they made at the camp beforehand.
I don't think so. And you guys, I feel a little vindicated on this. I feel like I brought up this question a lot over the last year of like, how do you fit all of them in the team? They don't all fit. Someone has to get left out. I look at this tournament, and as well as he's played, I still question the decision of Richie over Sam, because I think that was the choice, right? You play Tejan at right wing back and Fonzie higher in the attack and Sam Adekugbe out there, or you played Richie where you did, because you were never going to drop Jonathan David. You were never going to drop the two center mids that played. You're not going to drop Alistair Johnson. Like everyone else was a given, and Tejan was fit enough to start. I agree with all of you, or both of you, in that I think Sam Adekugbe proved over the last year his two-way play, his physicality, so he can come inside and defend, the support he gives Alphonso Davies. Even the cross he hits against Belgium off the bench for Laren was a difference-making play And I think he got lost in the shuffle of what John Herdman was trying to do. And as for the first time, really, that everyone was fit and playing and healthy, he was the one that got pushed out.
But the one thing that I would say, sorry to just keep harping on this, is that the one person that showed up late into this conversation, and it was Junior Hoylett. And I wonder if age sort of trumped all of this. Like, I feel like he came out of nowhere, and I know that he's had a good season, and I know that he had a great run against Japan, and people were excited about him. And I know that he's been with this team, and it's a brotherhood, and it's his last opportunity. But I'm wondering, and we can get into this into the next game, because I think that there's another outlier in that last game that everyone's been talking about in Atiba, that I think he might be holding on to these guys a little bit too long in moments where he needs to be a little bit more cutthroat. And I don't know, like, Junior didn't play poorly. I just think that it came out of nowhere in the last 2 weeks before World Cup that Junior Hoylett is going to be your midfielder / hold right back / whatever, and which then could shift Richie to the left, when Richie could have done that role. Anyway,
I think we should get to the Croatia game, but I will just say to close off the Belgium game, Canada had a lot of chances, and the XG skews heavily in their favor. We're going to hang that banner at some stadium in Canada. The XG 2.4 at 0.8. We're also going to hang the banner of Tata saying we were the best team so far after the first match day, which that was wonderful as well.
Put it up in Regina.
They gotta somewhere. We'll put it somewhere. But the vibes generally were good, and I think a lot of people were sad about the missed chances and the penalty, and why wasn't Canada able to break through? And we talked about Thibaut Courtois being underrated and obviously a very good goalkeeper, but there was a lot of good things to come out of the game, including, I think, some confidence. That confidence included the Herdman stuff, which again has been covered at length. And if you're listening to this pod, I'm sure you know what we're talking about, but it became a big deal, and it's the World Cup. That's what happens. And people are easily taken, I think, when nationalism is involved to get their backs up and take things personally. And we saw a lot of that, but I just really didn't find anything overtly wrong with it other than everyone could hear it, and potentially things like that can come back to bite you just in embarrassing ways. Not to say that it's why Croatia ended up winning the game, but I just thought it was one of those things where it's my first time here. I'm really excited to be here. And it was another one of those things where we haven't really seen John make those kind of missteps in the run up to this. And then during the game, and then that, to me, were a couple instances where I thought, it's just new for everyone. It's not just new for the players.
He clearly seemed apologetic after it. I think it's also because it's not his personality. I think it made him uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But Alphonso Davies missed a penalty in the opening 10 minutes of the game against Belgium, and I didn't hear anyone talk about that for the next 3-4 days or ask about it going into the Croatia game.
And then he scored right away, so it worked.
Exactly.
It worked then, obviously.
But I'm being serious in saying that from the moment he said that to the moment of the Croatia game, no one said anything about the Canadian national team except that they played well and that John Herdman said this thing. And in the end, I think a coach will take that. And I find it very funny that everyone goes, well, it motivated Croatia. When you motivate a team, it's to start a game ready. They conceded a goal 2 minutes in. And from that moment on, were they not going to try and score after being behind? And I'd argue they didn't run up the score because pushing 3-1 is necessary to win a game until Kamal Miller lets a ball through his legs for a 2-0 break, which I don't know. Not even I would miss that if I was playing against a U5 team being cute and nice. Like, I don't see a single moment in that game that changed because of that.
Let's get to that goal, because that Fonzie moment was incredible.
Buchanan with the cross in towards Alphonso Davies! He missed the penalty in the opener. He makes amends today. Canada's history-making moment delivered by their biggest superstar. A goal the country has been dreaming about for decades.
So glad Luke Wildman got to call that, and so glad he absolutely nailed it. Electric moment. One that I'm sure a ton of us will never forget. We'll get to the postmortem in a sec, but SK, how was that?
It was too too early to happen. Not like, once again, it's going to be a moment that I'm going to remember forever, but I think it happened too quickly for me, in the sense that you're just all of a sudden
you scored too early, obviously.
Oh my god! Oh my god! What just happened? What, like, how? I wasn't ready for this. Like, I wasn't just like
settled in yet.
Not at all. It was just like, oh, my body was just vibrating. I didn't know how to deal with it. It was, my body wasn't ready to cry, so it didn't know what to do. But it was great. It was everything that you wanted it to be. It wasn't like a sloppy goal. It was sort of great cross to a guy who just jumped over everyone. And obviously the fullback was like 5'6", but jumped over everyone and put it in the back of the net to start the game. It was great. It was it's a moment that, once again, we'll all remember forever. So it's perfect.
And then a moment we won't forget either is, I think, the Stefan Eustáquio injury that he picked up around halfway through the first half, which I think was maybe the beginning of the end for Canada in this game, because that's around the time I think Croatia settled in really and began to dictate play. I've had a few days to think about this and think about what could have been done differently, and we're having the conversation about what would their tactics have been against Belgium if they scored that penalty. But I was of the mind, I think right away, that they didn't have the personnel to sit in against anyone, let alone a team like Croatia, where they had a bunch of guys that could pull strings, and Perisic is a demon on the ball on that wing. So could they really sit in with Vittoria and Kamal and Alistair Johnson? It just didn't seem logical to me. But in the hours since the match, and thinking about some of the other games I've watched in this tournament so far, I'm a bit perturbed that they didn't tweak things. And especially after Eustáquio told them that he was struggling, because I think what you were getting to, Sean, in terms of holding on too long and sticking with something maybe for too long, I think it's clear that's what happened there. I know you maybe don't trust some of the midfielders you brought with you, but you brought them, and it was at that time where maybe you had a chance to change things for the better
and help those guys, right? Like that was me. Listen, I did the watch along show with Amy Walsh, who's obviously. She's Montreal based, and she's, we were both calling for Sam Piette, and, in maybe different ways, but bringing him on helps Atiba if you're leaving him on, or helps Eustáquio if you're still going to try and keep him out there. And it just felt like, yes, John Herdman put his head in the sand a bit with some of those decisions.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was sort of like the worst possible situation for both moments to happen, with Eustáquio going down injured around the 30th minute, and then having Atiba also look like he's carrying a piano on his back for 70 minutes. Like it was just like, okay, I have a sub that I can use to either take Eustáquio out or take Atiba out, and obviously his hand was forced. And I think he wanted to ride it out to half, and that, I think, was the moment that sort of really put Canada into the situation that they got into and had to start chasing the game, and then that's sort of when it sort of fell apart. It's a shame. It's a shame that two of the most like consistent players were the ones in question, in Tiba and then Eustáquio just being injured. But it's tough to be 30 minutes into the game and be like, well, we're going to put Piette and Oso into the game and good luck. So I don't know what the right move in that moment was, but clearly it wasn't keeping both of them until half.
I also think, well, let me actually not push back, but add a little, which is I actually think not starting, I would say Jonathan Osorio, but you could put a different name in there, is actually part of the problem, because why were you asking Atiba to do that much at 39 years old, coming off an injury against Luka Modric, Kovacic, and Brozovic, right? Yeah. Like, and that's part of, listen, we've spoken about a lot of the good things John Herdman has done, and we're going to talk about him for the rest of the show, but He has deficiencies, and some of the tactical decisions feel more emotional, and it works for him, and it got the team where they needed to be. But when you get to the highest level, for players and coaches, you see the little mistakes that come with their skill sets. And that's what you saw over the course of the games. And I think you saw it in his performance as well.
I think Atiba, this being his 100th cap, also emotionally blinded, I think, a lot of us. That being said, I saw Patrice Bernier's lineup before the game, and he didn't have Atiba in there. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, yes, because it's pretty short rest, and he hasn't played very much in the last few months. It would make a lot of sense if he didn't start, but I totally understood why his name was there when the lineup was released, and there's like this euphoric feeling of, oh, it's wonderful to see him achieve this milestone, but that feeling changed rapidly as the game went on, obviously. And I was screaming at the TV for the referee to blow the whistle for halftime at around the 42nd minute, which I think probably was telling, because we all were, and they scored, and that really, really took the wind out of everyone's sails as Croatia went up just before halftime. And then from there, it was obviously a long road back. When Oso came on, though, that when he had that opportunity, when he launched that shot that just shaved past the left post, my God, I was going to explode if that went in. That was the moment. You know, when things have to go crazily right for something good to happen? That was the moment where if that goes in, I'm ready to believe anything. It was so close.
Yeah, and that's where, again, you come back to the good. John Herdman gets this team up, right? They explode out the gates against Belgium. They dominate out of halftime against Belgium. They explode out of the gates against Croatia. And again, they were the better team for the first 10 to 15 minutes in the second half against Croatia. And listen, this is saying this as a U.S. fan where I spent the last 24 hours turning to people and saying, if we had just scored one more goal, if we'd beaten Wales or beaten England, where would we be right now? Like, and that's how dumb these tournaments are, and how dumb it is that we use it as a ruler for 4 years or a lifetime of work for people. But that's the difference. And especially when you don't have the horses to go after it for 90 minutes and grind a team down, right? And or it be Germany and be able to take those punches because you have elite talent that can get you a moment the other way, like they did against Spain. Like that's sort of where you're going to sit. And that's where it really hurts with Canada, because I thought they were dangerous enough offensively to push these teams. And when you look back, the best part of the performance was that Belgium only scored one goal, statistically.
I think the conversation after the game also focused on John Herdman and the pregame, and there was some issues with him not shaking the Croatian manager's hand, which I understand as well, being in the heat of the moment. And then, of course, a media kerfuffle with Alphonso Davies only doing the international media, aka the broadcasters, and not availing himself to the reporters associated with the various outlets on the ground there in Qatar, leading some truly ridiculous think pieces published mainly in the CBC today. So we'll get to Morocco. There's a lot of questions in AskAFP, so that'll serve as our preview for that game. But Sean, just like final line on Croatia and the aftermath. Were you surprised by the reaction? Because I think that one of my other things I was waiting for was maybe people underestimating what this all was, or like what the level was, and like how it feels like a different climb now. And I was expecting maybe not the backlash of people being mad that they lost 4-1, but were you surprised by that?
Yes and no. I think obviously and this is not like to be, but when you get the bright lights shone on you, like there's going to be new people watching you who have different opinions and may have not been around for the bad to not criticize. But there were moments in that game where there were moments where you could criticize. We just spent 15 minutes doing that. Yeah. Doing it. So like I think it's fair. The thing that I think my takeaway of all of this is that I think it was very naive of Canadian soccer fans to come into this tournament to expect seeing a team like Belgium, a team like Croatia, who may have not won a tournament, but have done long runs and understands tournament football. Like, Canada's experience is World Cup qualifying, and no disrespect to CONCACAF. It's its own beast, but it's over a long period of time, and it's getting up for a game once every 2 months or two every like whatever. This is like, you have to show up 3 days and play the best teams in the world and be composed and not get overrun. And that comes with playing in these tournaments. And so to come in here and be like, yeah, we can hang with Croatia, and you can for moments, but you've got to stay calm and you've got to be defensive oriented first. And I think we'll get to this in the next block, but I think the United States is showing that defense first, play to your strong points and push and try to scrape out wins. And obviously there are differences in groups, but still, it comes with experience.
That's been a big takeaway to me, by the way. Here, I have my printout right in front of me. Just swap Canada in to Group D or Group C.
Yeah.
Or Group G, maybe even, or Group H. Like, there's a lot of things that went wrong, and one is the reality of your first World Cup is that you have no points in the FIFA World Rankings and standings and all that crap, and you get stuck at the bottom of the draw, and this was by far the group of death. I mean, I know I keep touting myself. I said, look at Morocco, right? Like a few weeks ago, I was like, holy crap. Like, I know how good this Morocco team is, but like, this is a scary team. And especially now that we've seen the environments in Qatar for the teams from North Africa and the teams from the Middle East, like they've been playing with all of that. This was just a brutal group, and take out Croatia and put any other team in there, and you get a 1-0 loss against Belgium. You muddle your way to a tie in the second game. You're alive in the third game, right? You're in control of your own destiny potentially. And I think that one's really unfortunate. Sean, can I get like overall Canada played in the World Cup, Men's World Cup, like soliloquy? Because I don't think we've done that yet in general. We did it about the goal, but like your texts for 48 hours after the Belgium game were probably my favorite part of the World Cup.
I don't think I'm ready for the how it is or how I feel, or it's such a, I need a few moments to decompress, I think, because it's something that I never thought, honestly, aside from being given the World Cup in 2026 as a host of a one of three. I honestly came to a point where I did not believe that this organization or governing body or whatever would ever make a World Cup. And then for them to go into the Belgium game and stand toe-to-toe once again with maybe not the most up-to-date Belgium squad and form heavy, but they went toe-to-toe and did everything that John Herdman sort of has put his stamp on this team in like belief and fighting for each other. And it just all came through in that game. And it was just sort of almost that perfect moment, and it just needed to just turn over. But it's not done yet. I still think that there's, once again, the game that comes up this week. I think that that's sort of the true defining moment for this team and how we're going to remember this tournament, because I do think that there's a win for this club.
I will be the hated host and move us along to the USA, but plenty more to come with Canada and AskAFP, including what to expect against Morocco. When we come back, the Yanks, the States more accurately, are through to the knockout round. We talk about how they got there and who they'll play coming up next. Welcome back to AFP. Just off air, David was already making fun of us for being out of the World Cup because that's what Americans do. They rub it in your face when things are going badly for you. USA, USA. I joke. mostly 90% joking. I am actually proud and pleased for my American friends because I did pick them to win Group B. They failed me in one regard. England tops the group, but over the course of these 3 games, David, I found a bit of an evolution amongst my American friends in terms of how they viewed the team. Very, very solid display against England, but a lot of people anxious, obviously, for a game in which they could be knocked out of the tournament. We talked a lot about your emotions watching these games, but was the England game, as far as 0-0 results go, exactly what you wanted to see for the States against an opponent of that caliber?
Yeah. Honestly, outside of 25 minutes against Wales, the entire World Cup has been. I wanted to see them impose themselves on teams that I thought they were better than. They did that overwhelmingly in the first half against Wales, as well as against Iran today. But the England game, there are still, and I've talked about this a lot, lack of experience. I still think there's quality steps that need to go. It's great that these players play in these clubs, but most of them don't start, or most of them are not central pieces of their team because they still need more consistency, or there are parts of their game they need to add to. But they went out against England. They didn't beat themselves. They showed the special players we have in the team that could create moments of brilliance, that could defend in moments of brilliance, goal keep, stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, it feels like the world came out of that game saying that the U.S. was the better team and that the U.S. can play at that level. And that level is pushing a top 10 team level.
A good gauge for me in that regard is how mad the other fans are at their coach, or why they're mad at their coach.
Right.
And the level of vitriol directed at Gareth Southgate said to me that they were embarrassed that the Yanks outplayed them. And they were embarrassed that they got showed up by the hated Americans at their game, but they did. And I thought that was really impressive. I mean, the players that I thought were going to be the difference for the U.S. in the midfield really have been. Tyler Adams, as impressive as he has been off the field in terms of his duties as captain, has been freaking awesome. And he's been carrying over what he did for his club team. But all the guys that needed to show up here have been doing that. And I think of the many big accomplishments for a group this young, the experience stuff hasn't really been a thing, David, thus far. I don't think they've ever looked like they were overexposed. I think Carlos Queiroz called them Ferraris in his post-match, and saying the only way to stop him is to block the highway.
You know why? Because Carlos Queiroz showed up in his black Armani t-shirt with his gold chain, and the only way he can speak about things is either talking about boxing or Ferraris. He is a vibe on its own.
I hear Ferrari needs a new technical director as well.
Yeah,
so
true.
Maybe they can link up. But that all extremely promising to come out of that England game, and also making them that mad that the U.S. was able to play that well, I think is also a moral victory if you needed one.
And, proving to the players that they can play their game at that level, right? I think my hope is what we'll see against the Netherlands is taking that on and saying, yeah, we are who we are, no matter who we're playing against. But, there are moments in the game that I think that Weston McKennie miss will replay in my mind for a really long time. Pulisic hits the crossbar. And the nature of a 0-0 game is that, you're tense because any mistake, any small issue, all of a sudden you're losing, and that shifts everything. And the U.S. just never turned off for the entire game. And that alone, when you talk about not seeing the age, young players normally turn off and make mistakes. I will say, I think what we saw against Iran and Wales, part of that is game states and reality. Part of that is I do think a more experienced team can win more 50-50 battles to not get pushed as deep in their half, and can understand maybe a little more how to release pressure and how to get themselves a reprieve for a couple moments. But for the most part, as you've said, they haven't played that. And I give credit to a lot of people. I think the biggest one is Tyler Adams. Tyler Adams has acted like he's 35 since he was 17. Now he's 23. He's captain, and he's still doing it. And if you're not going to have experience, that's the best next thing you can have, which is true leadership and true belief. And he has it on another level than most athletes you'll see. I've been around him since he's 15, and he's been that way forever. He's an incredible human being, and I think we all saw this off the field this week as well as on the field this week. And I just think without him, I don't know that most of this is possible.
Let's get to that big game. The U.S. needing a win, and it comes via the ball shot heard around the world. The crushing ball shot heard around the world.
McKennie saw the run of Dest, and there he is, and Pulisic's in there! The United States make their move in Group B. 2 draws have given them a platform from which to build, and now they're going all out for victory.
Captain America left the game at halftime after being he looked like he was in a bad state. One of those I can't celebrate because I'm too injured kind of goals. He has been diagnosed with a pelvic contusion, which sounds utterly painful. And his day to day, I saw he put out an IG post though, celebrating with the boys from his hospital bed. What a moment for him though. I was laughing before the tournament in our preview show. I said there'll be a new Captain America, and you did too, David. I think you said a new face will emerge as the vanguard of U.S. soccer. It still might be Tyler Adams, but we shouldn't underestimate goals. And I wonder if this goal keeps him as Captain America.
I think there's a very real possibility. You guys haven't experienced it, but every commercial, like not just soccer commercials, like every commercial has been Christian Pulisic for 8 months now. It's cars, it's Fox, it's holiday season. Like everything has been Pulisic. He's the name everyone knew. And there's 2 ways that can go. You don't deliver and you kind of become infamous in one way. But Landon Donovan was pushed that way and he did deliver. And he is still the one American soccer name that everyone knows. I think Pulisic's put himself in that space today, and nothing will ever take that away. And so other guys can get in there with him because there is such an opening and a dearth, especially if he can't play in the next game. But either way, there are no other names that people know. And this team's been really away for 8 years now. And so this is the arrival kind of on the main stage for them. And I do think other people will emerge from this tournament as pieces, other stars. But to me, this is Pulisic. And this is what you want in sports. You want the biggest names with the most pressure to deliver in the biggest moments. And that's what he did. And, I've had to listen to, I cannot even explain to you how painful the coverage of the World Cup has been here in the US. Of just an hour in between games of try harder and be better and work tougher and be a star and like all of this crap. But he did that. He put his body on the line. He gritted it through. And that's what
he crushed his pelvis. Are you happy now? Broadcaster, he crushed his pelvis for you. He literally crushed his pelvis. The U.S. also has Mikel Arteta to thank for teaching Matt Turner how to pass the ball with his feet, creating that goal. Of course, Tim Weah and Yunus Musa did some stuff, I guess, as well in the lead up to that. Serginho Dest, I thought, was amazing as well, DG. And I thought the backline in general, Cameron Carter-Vickers drawing in for Walker Zimmerman, excellent. The backline for the States, Tim Ream. Who would have thought a few years ago Tim Ream would be in this spot? I know the young factor and the fact that all these guys are just breaking onto the scene is the big story, and rightfully so. But it is cool to see a redemption story like this for a guy who's playing pretty damn well in the Premier League as well.
And he's sort of part of this lost generation. So for him to get to reemerge with this group, I think is special. And I said this on the close of my post-game show, but myself and friends, I don't know if we've done this on air, but off air, we always had this conversation about having a CONCACAF team and not. It is a different challenge to go and win at Honduras than it is to go to a World Cup or to play in a Nations League final. And we haven't really had the depth to do it, but I do think our coaches have somewhat convoluted of like, let's find my best 11 and play them every game. And that's not what Berhalter did. He used one group to qualify, and then he went out and said Haji Wright, Tim Ream, you guys get your opportunity now. You're part of the group. And I give credit to Berhalter, one, keeping the relationship strong enough to have those players be willing to come back and be able to perform, and two, to recognize the moment and say Tim Ream struggles on bumpy pitches and he can't fly around the entire continent and then play at a high level in heat. But on a nice, clean grass against English Premier League and Championship players, 3 games in 8 days, Tim Ream is really good at soccer, and he can do things that no one else can do in our pool, especially with the injuries to Chris Richards. And so he's been awesome. Carter Vickers, I thought, was great today. I don't actually think he helped in the ways that Berhalter put him in there to break down a low block, but he was perfect defensively, so it doesn't really matter. And honestly, outside of Jedi, Anthony Robinson not knowing what to do with the ball if he's not whipping it in with the cross, I can't really complain about the performance of any of the other starters.
S. McGinnis brought this up on the Discord, but have they thought about getting Cameron Carter-Vickers an exception to wear 3 numbers on his back, like a CVV code on your credit card, Liga MX style? Have they thought about the branding opportunities with your Citibanks and your MasterCards? I feel like that's a slam dunk.
It does feel like a good one.
All right, they're through, and we know who they're going to play. It's a tasty one. Louis van Gaal's Netherlands in the round of 16. Netherlands not looking super convincing, but they've had one of the stars of the tournament so far, Cody Gakpo. They're number 8, scoring a bunch of goals and looking like he's going to cost someone $100 million very soon. Frankie de Jong's there. Some older dudes, some relatively youngish dudes, but the sentiment I'm hearing is that it's doable, DG. Do you think doable includes involving someone like a Gio Reyna if Christian Pulisic can't play? Because I feel like that might make a lot of sense here.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like Gio Reyna's an option if he hasn't been used. And that comes down to physical stuff. There's no world in which he's healthy and ready to go and he doesn't get put into a 1-0 lead over Iran or a 1-1 tie against Wales, or is, earlier in the 0-0 game. And I think you saw that in the England game of not really being able to make a difference. I don't think he's physically there. So that makes the decision pretty tough. If Pulisic can't go, you assume it's Brendan Aronson, which I would say this was his best performance at the World Cup. And I think being able to play at the start of the half, rather than trying to find the pace of the game for a player who plays at such a high speed and is constantly pressing, I thought he looked better. So I'm hopeful for his performance. I can't see a world in which Haji Wright plays. Like, he was such a negative in this game, and I thought he was a neutral at best in the England game. Jesus Ferreira is here. Like, if you call 26 players to the World Cup, you better believe in playing all 26 of them. And so if it's not Josh Sargent because he's injured, I'd love to see Jesus Ferreira get the opportunity in that spot to try and be a difference maker. There isn't a ton of depth in the attack right now for the U.S. Like, you just look at the potential subs at the end of a game, and it's a different center forward to run. It's Brendan Aronson, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't seem like Luca Del Torre's fit. He hasn't played a single minute. He was the first guy outside of the starting 3 in midfield the entire round of qualifying. He has not played. Reyna has only played X amount of minutes that he's played. So it feels like those two are not options. Then you're looking at Jordan Morris and Christian Roldan, and you're pretty far down the list.
But the Dutch are there for the taking. So I ask you this. How do you think they'll set up against Holland? I know they've had a relatively easy run of things, Holland, in terms of their group, though I think Senegal and Ecuador have proven to be 2 of the more exciting teams so far. I saw LVG demanding quote-unquote respect before their last game against Qatar because they've been on quite an unbeaten streak. I think it's at 18 games now. I feel it's a bit Belgium USA 2014 vibes. Is it just because Belgium and Holland are close to each other?
Yeah, it's your Benelux connections. I believe my understanding was before the show you bought the rail pass for all 3, so you're probably just trying to get.
I did, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
You want to get the bang out of the buck, so you want to use all of them.
Carmen Sandiego was based on me, by the way.
Yeah.
So I'm all over the place. Yeah.
I would say that to me, the way I view this game is similar to how I viewed Canada and Belgium and Canada and Croatia, which is I think the chances will be there to score because of the deficiencies that the Netherlands have shown, especially the gaps they leave for you to counter against them. We saw Ecuador outplay them in the second game, and I think that's a pretty good comp to us of we're more straight line runners and direct attacks than the possession that a Denmark has. But it's all going to be about finishing. We're going to get our chances. If we finish, we put them under pressure. They struggle in those moments. If we don't, at some point, Cody Gakpo, Memphis Depay, and Frankie de Jong will break through. So that's, to me, where a lot of it falls. I would be surprised if Berhalter changed the formation to a back five to mirror the Netherlands. My guess would be he's just going to pull Weah in and play, a 4-2-3-1, and that way get a little width from those three attackers that can cover the wingbacks of Dumfries and Blind. But my guess would be the shape looks fairly similar, and it's all just going to be about intent. And the U.S. has been too passive in attacking transition moments, especially in the Wales game, less so in the England game, and at times in this game, in trying to close it out. You need to make the Netherlands pay in those moments, or you're going home.
David, one question for you that's not on our rundown, but I just want to know. You go the full 120. Who are your penalty takers
on this team?
Yeah.
Whew. Well, the thing is, there's no way Weston McKennie's still in the game at that point, right?
Mostly, number one, yeah.
And I would be shocked if Serginho Dest was still in the game as well. Yeah. So I think I'd feel comfortable with Timothy Weah taking one. I'd be comfortable with Pulisic taking one, although
120.
I doubt he will be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's true. Pulisic might be off the bench at that point.
Yeah.
With the pelvic injury, just to take a penalty. I'm trying to think about the rest of this team. I think I'd feel pretty good with, I know Sargent and I know Jesus Ferreira can take them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been proven. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else out there that I feel really good about. That might be it.
Oh boy.
Oh, okay. Well, on to the rest of the World Cup. We'll do a quick
By the way,
roundup.
Can I just say real quick?
Yeah.
If that happens, by the way, there's no way I walk away upset. If the U.S. goes 120 against the Netherlands in the round of 16, with this group at this age, in this stage, I won't be sad. If I walk away feeling like they should have won or they were good enough to win, I think it'll be a good World Cup.
But will you walk away doing 120 minutes?
I don't know.
Will you just be a puddle?
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Who have you guys liked watching so far? Maybe we'll keep it on the positive side, but of the teams, obviously still a bit more to do in terms of the groups, but standouts, teams that you were expecting little from and delivered more, or maybe teams that you were hyped for and they've kind of showed out already. I'll say Senegal doing the thing without Sadio Mane was inspiring, and Koulibaly being the guy to lead them to where he did was awesome. I think that was one of the cooler moments, and it sucks that it happened against Ecuador because I really enjoyed what they've done at this tournament as well.
Mm-hmm.
The Group A, I mean, Qatar being terrible, and I genuinely kind of feel bad for their players because I don't know what's going to happen for their prospects after this, because I'm assuming the vibes are bad. But the rest of that group was really fun, and I'm really happy for Senegal. So what about you guys?
By the way, apparently Qatar is back in the Gold Cup next year. They said it on the Fox broadcast earlier today. Yeah,
let's go.
I hadn't heard that anywhere, so I didn't know that. I would add to Senegal. I would actually say literally every single team from Africa, but especially Ghana.
Yeah,
they are the youngest team, I'm pretty sure, at this tournament. They've played 2 games that are each 3-2. One in favor of them, one against them. They're fun. They're entertaining. Mohamed Kudus is a stud. He's the future of the game. They have everything that I'm looking for when I watch a World Cup. But Morocco's been great to watch. Cameroon have been really fun because they don't defend. So I'd say all of them have been really entertaining. Japan was the one I thought I would say.
Yeah.
I picked them to get out over Germany. The Germany game was great. They will not feel good about themselves if they go home because they couldn't take care of business against Costa Rica.
Agreed. And so since you picked an entire continent, David, with much other than just choosing, and like, to be perfectly honest, this is the boring answer, but I've enjoyed the way Spain has played. I think that Spain-Germany game on the weekend sort of lifted my spirits after a Canada game. It was just a really fun to see two teams like lay it on the line and play well. And then I wasn't sure what to expect from the young midfield in Spain, and they've looked pretty good. And then Fernan Torres, I don't know if I like him that much, but he's looked good. So anyway, Spain is the team that I've enjoyed watching so far.
If Morata's scoring, it's an omen. It's like Groundhog Day. It's like one of those that he's shown a shadow. So you could expect six more wins for Spain.
Can I just add, one of the teams that I have, for the 180 minutes that they've played, been happy the entire time so far has been Mexico. Watching Mexico fail at this stage has really warmed my heart.
Woo!
It's like full holiday feelings for me.
Oh, jeez.
Canelo threatening to fight Leo.
Oh my God, get out of here.
Things are going for Mexico.
Oh, by the way, you guys
It's
didn't ask me about social media posts about the Islamic Republic of Iran. We missed out on that too.
Yeah, my bad. My bad. I'm glad we skipped it. Unforced error or horrible misstep by people meaning to do the right thing?
Or nailed it.
Or nailed it.
Third door.
Third option.
They won, and people in the streets of Tehran are celebrating the U.S. win right now. That's the third door.
In terms of predictions, we'll come back to those, but I'm feeling less good about Uruguay in general. Betancourt, score that goal, Doc. Oh. What are you doing all those cool moves and then shooting it right at the goalie, huh? What is that?
I still feel okay about Argentina.
That'll be, and also, Portugal looks pretty good. Drama aside, hair of God aside, Bruno Fernandes playing quite well these days. They should be a problem. And Brazil looking fine, but also having 40 attackers to choose from seems complicated, and Neymar not being one of them seems really complicated for Tite in terms of getting it right mixture-wise. That'll be fascinating to see what they do if he doesn't come back. He probably will, though, eh? I feel like the precaution was, hey, we have all these dudes who can play and get us enough to get through so we can rest them.
Maybe. Either way, I love Vinicius, so I'll take it.
They'll be all right. Okay, when we come back to wrap up this week's show, it's the mailbag, Ask AFP. Welcome back to AFP. Before we close off this week's episode, wanted to send a big shout out to our patrons for making the World Cup extra awesome on the Discord. Sean, what does a new patron potentially get if they join us?
Well, number one, they get ad-free episodes. They get it the day we record. Maybe not tonight, though. We'll see. It's a race for our dear editors. But you get it. Yeah, you get it the day we record, and then you get to hang out with us in the Discord. Every single moment that you want to talk soccer, there's somebody there that's probably going to respond to you, and it's going to be a great time. We've got a great community that talks World Cup, and then when the World Cup ends, it's MLS preseason coming up. CPL's starting back up. Soccer never stops. It's a fun place to be.
We're talking Juve dismantling for the 400th time in there, all sorts of stuff and more. If you join us at patreon.com/a football podcast and support us today. Sean, to the questions.
It's now time for Ask AFP, where Devang, David, and myself do the best to answer all your questions. Thanks to everyone who's sending their questions through the Patreon Discord as well as Twitter. We start with a tweet from DJP Tweets. He says, as a born and raised Canadian with both Polish and Croatian roots, I've always repped the Canadian men's national team first and foremost. What are your thoughts on fans who root for their background country ahead of their actual country? There's also a follow-up by saying, I think Canada in this situation is still complicated with the fact that many of us Canadians at the World Cup is new and unfamiliar experience.
It's a good question, and he does point out that for the U.S. perspective, because you guys have more experience with this, David, it's a bit different. And as a Canadian, like, we've never really had Canada in the World Cup in my lifetime, at least, to support them. I used to care more about this, I think. I used to care more when people didn't care when Canada was in World Cup qualifying or had matches at BMO where it was quote unquote important and they kind of scoffed at it. I care a lot less these days. And I mean, clearly it's their loss. But oftentimes I found that the reason someone is supporting the place that they weren't born, there's for deeper reasons and reasons that matter to them. And I have to respect that because that's really what it's all about. So I think I definitely used to care about this a lot because I thought maybe it was looking down on Canadian soccer. But these days, I feel like there's a lot of different reasons why people support different nations. So I think that's totally up to them.
I agree with most of what you said, and I have no problem with people having draws for other reasons. I would say it's still frustrating to me when those people root against the US or Canada.
Yeah, that's
they're not
weird
playing that team.
Really weird.
And that
That's
seems
really
to be
weird.
something that still exists, or like randomly picks Germany because they're good. And it's like, has any neutral person ever liked Germany before? This is like one of the weirdest things to do. Italy's on that list as well. So I find those a bit odd still, but for sure, I echo everything Devang said. And it's also one of the nice parts. Like for me, I'm probably going to go watch the Mexico Saudi Arabia game at a Mexican restaurant tomorrow, and go watch the Senegal England game at a Senegalese restaurant. Like I still appreciate all those people having that connection to their countries or their heritage.
Moving on, Jason G asked on the Discord, do you guys think Dane St. Clair will start on Thursday for Canada? David?
Yeah, I do. I think he'll be one of the rotations. I don't think there'll be a ton, but I think he'll get, I think that's a clear spot to sort of pass the torch to the next generation. And I think Milan's had his World Cup opportunity and he's been celebrating. I think that there's enough there to say, let's get the next guy that chance who could be in, on the field in 2026.
You mean future TFC number 1, Dane St. Clair? I think that's a yes. It's true that I saw some random tweets surface that, those tweets where they tag like 80 journalists and it's like, saw this rumor, this is happening. It was one of those, but I'm going to choose to believe that future TFC number 1, Dane St. Clair, will start on Thursday, though. I think it makes a lot of sense for everything that David just said. And getting anyone who isn't going to, or getting anyone who's going to be in the conversation for 2026 caps now at the World Cup would be ideal for Morocco. So that's a big yes, at least I hope so.
Moving on, Canada Matty J asks on the Discord, do you play a lineup to win or do you give the bench players some World Cup game time?
It's a great question. I would argue that maybe our bench players give us the best chance to win this game.
Ooh.
I'm looking at certain guys. I'm looking at like an Adekube getting in. I'm looking at an Oso starting, at a Kone starting. I think that would be ideal for us. Obviously, you're keeping in the Davies and the Tejans and the Jonathan Davids, but I would argue that a heavy rotation with an eye towards the future wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. After just answering that I think it's going to be Dane, though, I wonder if the way Milan faced that abuse in the Croatia game, I wonder if John Herdman wants to have him leave this experience feeling better and feeling better about everything that he's accomplished and devoted to this team. So I think that's less nailed on than some of the other things that they should do.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, right? The midfield, you probably have no choice. Eustachio probably can't go. Atiba. So I agree there. We talked about Sam Adekube. I don't think I'd start Ikpe Ugbo or Liam Miller. Like, I don't think I'd go that far because those young players in Jonathan David and Fonzie are still your future. But I think there's an intelligent lineup in there that gives a bunch of other players opportunity, but also probably, as Devang said, is your best chance to win.
Moving on, S. McGinnis asks on Discord, casuals and sub-media figures are killing Herdman on social media. Did the F Croatia saga and tactical choices in the game alter your view on him? David?
Yeah, I think I probably already extended myself and answered this a bit, but I don't think so at all. And I do, let me go past that and say, I still think if John Herdman wants to be coach of the Canadian men's national team, he will be coach of the Canadian men's national team. I wouldn't be surprised if he chose to leave, but it's still his job to say no to.
But if David Goss was making the decision to bring him back for 2026, And you've been, once again, not John Herdman, but the whole 8-year phase.
I'm against it.
Do you still, you're still against it?
No, I was answering what you were saying before, or I was filling in and saying that, yes, I've always been against that. I'm probably still against it, but how to word this correctly? I'm not sure who you can get. We need to sit down over the next week or so and come back on the next show with the list. Yeah. But being a team that just qualified and hosting the next World Cup, that's your best shot to ever get someone who you think is maybe a step above.
That's kind of where I ended out. My opinion has changed a bit. I still am a really big fan, and I think we owe a lot to what John has done for the programs, both programs, and soccer in general in this country. But I think this tournament has shown us that there are levels, and John leading us to the World Cup this time doesn't necessarily mean he will be the right person to do that 4 years from now. But the problem for me is that I don't really know if the CSA should be trusted to find the next right guy as it's currently set up. And I wonder if you lose someone who has been such a utility knife, or a utility, like a Swiss Army knife for you, if you lose them, what happens going forward? Like, does an already kind of fractured organization lose even more luster? So yeah, they're in a weird spot. It's going to be interesting to see how these things kind of fall out in the coming months when the spotlight's off them a bit.
I will say, I don't want to fall in love with an idea too quickly or someone just because of small sample size, but if this World Cup's over and Wilfred Nancy is looking for a job and John Herdman is moving on, like, it could be the right timing for something like that.
Interesting. That's a I didn't expect that coming from you right now, but interesting. Last but not least, it was brought up in our World Cup chat on Discord that viewership of the World Cup has been around 50% higher than NFL games in Canada. So we're talking about 1.2 to 1.6 million viewers for non-Canada games compared to like 750K for NFL games. So like as a whole, the World Cup has absolutely dominated any other sport that's been played in Canada or on Canada team. What do you think has contributed to all this growth? And do you think that this is the peak, or do you think it can only go higher?
I think it'll go higher. I think people, the stakeholders who have the rights to stuff have seen, the people who don't have the rights to stuff have seen the level of impact this run has made. And I think for the better. I am a bit concerned though when we do step away from the glitz and the glamour of a World Cup and get to the nitty gritty of your average MLS games or your CPL games, or trying to get these games more available to more, or getting other leagues started up. Like, is that same passion going to be there? Is the investment going to be there? So I do believe that the growth will continue, but sometimes I think these numbers, they don't oversell the popularity of the game in this country. I think they kind of just they underline how massive this tournament is. Like, it's just a massive tournament. It's bigger than the Olympics. It's huge. So I don't know if it's possible to extrapolate that, you know what, because all these people were watching France-Denmark on a Sunday or a Saturday, that they're going to be invested in everything that we've got to do in between now and 2026. I don't think that happens automatically. So the growth will continue, but I wonder how we can build off this, because that's going to be the biggest question for a lot of people.
Yeah, I completely agree with Devang. I think the magnitude of the World Cup you can't match, but you will have now X amount of people who know who Alphonso Davies is, and Jonathan David, and Atiba Hutchinson. And if Atiba, starts a CPL team, that's a connection. And so I think there's just more space now and more infrastructure in terms of knowledge and star power and, moments to build it off of. But don't ever expect it to be 100%. But I can say here in the US, the sport's been built around the national teams, both the women's and the men's. And that's been sort of the tentpole things. It works to an extent, but it works better than the previous option, which was nothing.
And we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this week's episode and want to be kind, a rating or review would be wonderful as we try to get this pod into more people's ears. We're on Twitter as well at a football pod, as well as on patreon.com/a football podcast. Before we go, big shout outs to Zach. Happy birthday, good sir. Thank you for all the work you do behind the scenes to help us get ready for this show. It's massively appreciated. So happy birthday to you, Zach. And major thanks to producer Dylan, and for Sean and David. Thank you so much for listening to AFP. We'll talk to you next week.